Welcome everybody and well done for getting here, because I know transport has been totally dire this morning. Speaking from the heart here, it's been far too long on the M32. So good to see you all. We do have some people online. Hope you can hear us all okay, colleagues. And we will look out for your hands and things as we go through. But please do physically shout if we miss you, because we don't always spot people online quite so readily. So we do have some apologies from governors. So Grace Burns, Sarah George, JJ Martin, Mark Patterson and Peter Turner. And also from one of our non-exec, Martin Spikes. So obviously we've got Stu with us, so great to have you with us, Stu. And then later on we'll have Steve Hams joining us as the executive for the quality item, and Paula Clark will be here for the merger item, so they'll be joining us later. Are there any declarations of interest that anybody needs to make known today? No? Okay. Well, as always, colleagues, we are being recorded, so the video goes on the website at the end. So if you can just make sure that you speak up so that the recording can catch you, that would be good. Thank you. Okay, we haven't had any questions in advance from Foundation Trust members, so I take it that we can just acknowledge that item and move on to the minutes from the 22nd of July, which feels like a very long time ago. But those of you with long memories may want to make any amendments to the minutes. Anything to raise? No, in which case we'll take them as an approved record. And there are a number of points on the action log, most of which are closed. The main one that's ongoing relates to anti-racism training for the entire board. And those of you that were at the board meeting in public last week, or anybody that's watched the video on it, will know that we had a major item on our anti-racism strategy for everything. We've only just started thinking with it. Matters arising, so we know the traffic's doing videos, so don't worry.
Thank you.
So yes, I was just commenting, Ben, that you were certain that the board meeting last week.
I was.
Maybe sort of watches the video of it, and we had a major item on our anti-racism strategy for the group. Part of which is a commitment to thoroughgoing training across our senior leadership. So in the wake of that, I have emailed Jenny Lewis, our chief people officer, and we have got a commitment to ensuring anti-racism for the entire board. Some of us have done it, some of us haven't so far, but please can you put in place a plan? So it is very much a live thing, but haven't yet landed as something that is happening for the whole board. Although, as noted, actually, since the engagement session with governors, all board members, indeed all colleagues, undertake regular training, quality diversity and inclusion training, of their mandatory training. And for all colleagues on the board, that is up to date. So that's my update on that outstanding matter. Happy if there are things to follow through on that. No? Okay, in which case, unless there are other matters arising that people would want to address, let's move on to the chair's report, which is the report that was presented to the board last week.
Ingrid, if I may, apologies for being late, but I think I left a small comment about amendments to minutes. Was that picked up?
No. Apologies if I missed it. You would doubtless have put one of your post-its on. I'm not seeing. Oh, there. Yes, yes. It was to say that you'd visited another council of governors virtually.
Yes, rather than a physical visit, I thought it was worth clarifying.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
is that all right to be lit up?
Yes, negative, colleagues?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and anything else then on the minutes before we move on? Okay, and there no other matters arising to pick up? Okay, in which case I'll move on to the chair's report, which was presented to the board last week, so quite a recent update. So just on internal works, continuing to visit a wide range of services, to be visible, to hear from colleagues, to understand more about this incredibly wide range of services that we've got about across the two trusts. And so I've been to the opening of the same day emergency centre at Weston, which was brilliant and is really going to make a huge difference in terms of the flow through the hospital. I've been to this amazing 3D medical centre, which literally prints out body parts like faces and stuff like that for people, particularly if they've had radical surgery or trauma. So that was fascinating to see. I think it's pretty unique in the country, isn't it? And so that's at Frensham. I went to visit dermatology, learned a lot about the way that specialty is moving into community venues such as Cosham Hospital, but also doing loads of stuff through teledermatology directly into primary care. And that's impacting a lot on early diagnosis and throughput people in what is a really high volume specialty, so people are being seen faster. I spent some time with our palliative care, one of our palliative care consultants on end of life care, because I'm trying to get my head around how all of that network of services link up across what we do and what people like hospices do. So I also spent some time with Jessie May, which is a children's hospice. And actually, we employ their nurses at UHBW. So it's a really strong partnership with that, which was fascinating as well. I spent some time with our director of divisional director of medicine, Lisa Gallagher, because she has been elected as the co-chair of the South Bristol Locality Partnership, which I think is absolutely fantastic, because it means that we've got someone from our big acute provider in this very energised locality rooted bit of the health and social care system. So it was good to learn more about that. And in fact, she and colleagues came to present to private board the other day as well. I suppose the only other thing to highlight is that since this was written, I did a trip to the Macmillan Wellbeing Centre, and I was really pleased to meet some friends from the Chinese Wellbeing Community Association. I think I got that title right. Who are doing some amazing work, doing outreach into underserved communities to make sure that they can get early diagnosis and access to care, because often they're the communities that present very late with cancer. There's been lots going on with partners as well. There's been a second meeting of the community participation group. Paul, I think you were there for both of them. And that's going really well. We're really beginning to get on our feet in terms of how we're working together and what will count as success a year on from the perspective of the people that belong to that group. There was a huge partnership event then was there around the refresh of the joint clinical strategy, very well attended by about 150 or so partners from a very wide range of organisations, and there will be a write-up from it which we'll share with the governors. I also visited RV Health and its community clinic in Stapleton Road. Lots to learn from them about how they make their services accessible again to underserved communities. They provide from a trusted space. It's provided by people who look like them in a very multicultural part of the city. What is it? God or something.
Yeah, actually,
But lots to learn from them about making services accessible again to some underserved groups. And also I'm pleased to say that Bristol Western Charity had a launch of its new strategy, which some of us were able to go and support, showing an exciting way forward really for the future of the charity, and we continue to benefit hugely from their generosity. Couple of things nationally, I suppose, to highlight. One is that I'm continuing to work with the National Learning Set for Group Chairs, so that's about a dozen of us that meet regularly with high independence and very knowledgeable experts in the field. And also, I was able to present evidence to the Senior Salaries Review Body as part of a small team from NHS providers, and that will be put in public to make it all on. So that's it from me, but very happy to take anything that anybody would want to explore me. Oh, got another. Hello, welcome. We know the traffic's been hideous, so well done. Okay, well, if there are no points that people want to follow up, I will move on then. And over to Stu, present Maria's report on her behalf.
Excuse me. There's two vice chairs.
Oh, sorry, yes, would either of the, Martin's not here, but Sarah, is there anything you'd want to highlight?
no, I think activities that I've been involved with are recorded there. Amazing day at the Unitary Government Research. They hearing about some of the brilliant work that's being done by staff to really move on in what we understand about health and improving health. It's been really good to start to be able to engage in it.
At the end of all the reports, I had a question which was more, it may come up later, but I see there's been contact with the ICB, the ICP. Has there been anything come out of those meetings which would suggest they're going to help sort out the no criteria to resign problem?
Stu, that's probably something that will come out of your report, won't it? Because
It can now.
it can. Yes, there has been a lot of interaction with the Integrated Care Board. And again, any of you that were at the public board before last, which I know Ben was, and I think Rob, you were as well. We had a very lengthy conversation about the winter plan and whether we felt it was realistic to sign it off, given the persistent state of affairs, no criteria to reside over such a long period. And we asked for it to be delegated for further consideration to the QOC, which on this occasion the Quality Outcomes Committee, which on this occasion Sue chaired. And so I'm sure she'll be happy to pick up any thoughts from that. The upshot of that is that we required further assurances in terms of system actions to enable your confidence that we could deliver on that plan. And Stu can update from there.
It's been reported to us at the Governor's Quality Folks.
Right.
And the Governor's supported the action taken by QOC because, after all this time, trying to accept something which hasn't been achieved for the last 6 years just didn't seem right. So we support that, and hopefully that sort of action might well get a better response from the ICB.
Good job. Appreciate that support. Stu, I'm going to turn to you.
Yes,
You can
okay.
no doubt build on that.
Yes,
There
I
are
can,
other
yeah.
matters you want to raise as well.
Yes, so thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. Doing my best Maria impression this morning. So clearly you have the Chief Exec report. There are some issues in there which Ingrid already touched upon, so I'm going to duplicate. And there are some issues in there which are very specific to Maria, for example, her visiting schedule and so on. So I won't talk too much to those issues. There were some things I pulled out that I thought it would be of value just to pick up and mention. The first one is the medium-term planning framework, and of course, historically, we've worked on a one-year planning horizon. So I think it is very welcome to have a medium-term planning framework and medium-term financial settlement. It does make it easier to plan. You can see the detail of that. Just to flag up, we've clearly done a stock take against the 3-year plan and put that alongside the 1-year operational planning guidance as well, because we do get quite a lot of guidance from different directions, and trying to put it all into a single place and determine exactly what is it year by year that we need to achieve. It's not as straightforward as you might imagine, but we have done that piece of work. And so if we looked at our 4-hour performance in A&E, our 18-week performance for elective activity, our cancer standards, our diagnostic standards, we know what it is year by year from the different sources, including the medium-term financial, the medium-term planning framework, we need to achieve. And we know what we currently achieve, and we have plans that take us to each of those places. Now, clearly, the further away you go, the less detailed and specific those plans can, by their very nature, be. But nevertheless, we have done all that mapping piece of work, and we know what we have to achieve. And so, if I were to pick one at random and say, where are we with it? The A&E 4-hour target is probably a real headline act. Our current UHBW performance is around 77%. Now that's quite a complex number. So that's made up of a number of composite numbers and then adjusted for other components of our system. So you don't have to worry too much about that, but nevertheless, it is about 77%. The in-year requirement is to achieve 78%. So we're just like that. By March 27, the next thing that comes into play in any of the guidances is March 27, when we need to be at 82%, and then March 29, when we need to be at 85%. But for that particular requirement, the 4-hour requirement, there isn't a 28 requirement. So you can see it's very specific for mapping it out over the period of time, whereas some other standards, for example, the diagnostic standard, does have a 2028 standard associated with it. So just to let people know that that's in hand, we're working through that, and it forms part of our shorter and medium-term planning discussion with partner organisations. The next thing I was going to pick out is the current operational situation. Now, today, we are in day 4 of the latest round of resident doctors' industrial action. So as we speak, that's been running since Friday and will finish tomorrow morning. We have managed well with that. We managed well over the weekend with that. And as has now become, sadly, business as usual for us, we have a very robust planning process that we have in place to deal with industrial action, to manage it throughout the industrial action. And indeed, it was not unusual that some of our performances by those hard metrics improved during periods of industrial action rather than worsen. And that is actually that's related to the amount of senior staff we can take off of other duties and put into front door duties, for example. So that is under good control. There were some blips over the weekend in relation to a major IT outage in one of our neighbouring healthcare systems, but that had a knock-on consequence to us. So that was difficulty during the industrial action, but nevertheless we managed with that well. Our current operational situation is that it's pretty much business as usual. So we're running at about 80%, actually 80 escalation beds open, but it's non-normal capacity.
The no criteria to reside number today is about 180. 180 patients across all our footprints who fulfil that criteria.
Sorry, how many?
180,
Over all the hospitals?
correct.
That's come down then, hasn't it?
Well, so. So, we have a operational plan for this year. The operational plan for this year has a decreasing number of no criteria to reside by month, which takes us from the beginning of the year through to end of March, when that number will be down at around 105 is the aspiration. For November, the aspiration is to be about 136. And so, yes, it is down from where it was, but it's not down at the level that actually we were aspiring to for this time of year. So some definite sea change actually in ICB approach to this. Now that was precipitated because actually if in reality it was steady as she goes. We weren't really achieving that change until actually we went into the critical incident, which people will have seen was flagged up. It was on the news and so on. And that was a UHBW critical incident, which resulted in a whole BNSSG critical incident over the weekend. And that was a consequence of a deficiency in total bed numbers caused by the combination of no criteria to reside patients. At that point was 210. Flu's been early and greater than it was predicted to be. And the fact that we were required with pretty short notice to close 2 of our temporary wards on the basis of instruction from Avon Fire Service. So all of those came together to result in critical incident. The system response to that critical incident reduced our no criteria to reside number from around 210 the day before down to a bottom level of about 150. But it's now been creeping up, and as such, we've got a deep dive into that system sector on Thursday to get back into that. But what we really need to do is to bring that number down again. But it is nevertheless, as you rightly point out, lower than it was.
Is that across all the hospitals, or are some doing better than others with that?
Well, the bed loss was in Bristol, Royal and Surrey.
Yeah.
Western has been fairly steady. MBT actually went up a little bit. And of course, the risk is that system response to the critical incident BRI actually could worsen the situation elsewhere. So we're keeping a very, very close eye on that across the group. So overall, therefore, right now, we are doing well with elective activity. We're improving our diagnostic performance. We're doing very well with cancer activity. And the unscheduled care is as I just described. I was going to move us on from there. People are happy, yeah?
I've got one question about the industrial action, which was, I appreciate that using senior staff actually might improve service performance, but just curious at what cost. Presumably that's through provision of extras that those senior staff take up to do the work that's not being done by the resident doctors. So a little bit about the cost as well as the industrial action.
Okay, I think there are 3 or 4 costs associated with that.
Yeah.
One is a financial cost.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's direct pressure associated with our response to industrial action. And the last round, the cost to us organisation was around £700,000. The second cost is in terms of elective activity. So of course, there is a shift from some of those senior doctors undertaking elective work to undertaking emergency work. That keeps the front door safe, enables us to manage flow through the hospital, but we cannot achieve 100% of our planned elective activity at the same time. But this round, NHSE are expecting us to deliver 95% of planned elective activity, and we are there or thereabouts, but nevertheless, there is a reduction. The third cost is in the well-being of our senior staff, because if so many of these staff will be doing that activity days off, of weekends, on the days they would otherwise not be rostered to work. And so there is a definite cost to those individuals who giving up their free time overnight, over weekends to substitute for that resident doctor time. So it is not a sustainable situation to simply change how we provide our business to solve one problem because it has a number of knock-on consequences. I think there's
Yes, John certainly had
Yeah.
his hand up on his.
Thank you. Just to go back over on the NIPS criteria to resign quickly. I fully understand the need and the urgency to reduce beds and to free up beds. But I'm just a bit concerned about a case that I heard of where a patient was discharged, 94 years old, discharged, and was told that they would do an assessment at home, an assessment of his needs at home. I was a bit concerned about this. It did end up in a failed discharge, and the poor chap was back in hospital, back in Weston within a day. I'm a bit concerned that in the rush to free up beds that we lose sight of patient safety. I don't think assessments of needs should be done at home. I think they should be done, as always has been, in the hospital before the patient is discharged. Because I think if we don't, you could end up with a situation where you get more failed discharges and people just being rushed back into the hospital. And I think it's where we need to work closely with the integrated care board so that those assessments are done swiftly and promptly. But I am concerned about policy changing to assessment at home. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so there are when a patient is due for discharge, there are a number of different levels of need that that individual might have, and they would range from someone who's come into hospital who has no additional needs to when they had none when they came in,
Yeah,
and is simply able to just go home and continue to manage in the normal way, all the way through different gradings through to a person who cannot be discharged from hospital without the need for a permanent residential or nursing care home placement. So that's the range.
Yep.
Within that, there are a group of individuals in whom that is exactly the plan, and that has been the case for many years. The plan that they will go home and be assessed at home. Clearly, they're assessed in hospital to make sure they're suitable for that plan. But the fact is that is a very common way of us managing individuals' needs. And it's called discharge to assess, and so we have a system whereby that is set up and is utilised and does not result in not normally result in the type of risk you've highlighted. So I wouldn't want to give the impression that isn't an appropriate thing to do. It absolutely is an appropriate thing to do. However, if in an individual case that hasn't worked, then we need to go back around that loop and see what happened to that individual and see if there's some learning from that and some change to our policies, then of course we would take that on board. And I would want to reassure people that alongside our desire to make sure that we have flow in the hospital and we utilise all our beds to their maximum and we keep our front door safe, we absolutely recognise our need to make sure people go home in a safe and reasonable fashion. And so I would not want to give the impression that we're precipitously throwing people out of hospital when they're not ready to be so. That is not the case. But it is also the case that there's a very clear process that we have in place for discharge to assess additional needs that people might have at home. So it's not wrong that happens for that particular cohort of individuals.
I can see another couple of hands wanting to come in. So Paul and then Martin on the screen over there. Paul.
Thank you. It's regarding the resident doctors' industrial action. The CEO's report mentions that NHS England have produced a 10-point plan to improve resident doctors' lives. What action has taken place to implement the plan? And the report also refers to the CEO meeting resident doctors to hear firsthand about their experiences. And I'd like to ask that governors be provided with a report from someone on the senior management team when that meeting has taken place as to what came out of it.
So I don't know, Xavier, for that second point, I don't know when that is.
Was it early December that Maria will be meeting with resident doctors from both organisations? And the plans would be for it to be in her next chief executive report, the output of that, so we can make sure that that makes its way through to.
Thank you. In terms of the former, that sits in with our medical leadership team and medical education team. There is on that 10-point plan and aligning our current support for resident doctors with the plan. The good news is that we have a very good response to each of the components of that plan. There are some we're slightly better at than others and I'm working on, but nevertheless there is a robust piece of work led by the two site medical directors aligned with the medical education department in delivering against that plan. So that is in existence and is currently delivering.
Thank you. And Martin,
Yes, I just wanted to comment on something John Sibley said just now. Back in 2004, my uncle was in the BRI and he's been in there for a little while, but not as long as the new criteria to reside. But when it came to being discharged, he had to go home to be assessed to make sure that he could actually get around, which you can't do that when they're in hospital. So from the second he was living in an upstairs flat, so from the second he walked in through the front door, they assessed how he got up the stairs, how he got into the flat and moved around, and they could see if he was able to make a cup of tea or to cook himself a simple meal. And like I say, if he's in a hospital bed on the seat next to the bed, it's not something they could do an assessment about. They've actually got to be in the patient's home to see how they manage. So I agree with what Stuart said. It's the only way to go, really.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. That's really helpful, and it's good to hear that. If there was no other, I was just going to mention one other thing. If there was nothing else on the IA or operational situation. No? Okay, great. So the only other thing I was going to mention was the Bristol NHS Group Partnership event, which was a fantastic event that Ingrid, you and Maria chaired, but they led by a number of our medical and other clinical leaders. Steve Paul was formed a great part of that leadership. We had a number of partners at that event. I know people in this room were there. Ben, great to see your dog come along and join in with the event. So that was very entertaining. But it was a really useful event. Really great to hear people's views on the future of our clinical strategy and to really determine what the next step is for where we want to be clinically. And I will, of course, flag up that our group and subsequent merger journey started with, as many people in this room were there and will know, us thinking about what we want to do next clinically. That was how it started. And we've moved on a long way since then, but we're just making sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that the next iteration of our group and merged organisation future again needs to be grounded in and what is our clinical plan for the future. And this event was a great way of really bottoming out what that plan needs to look like as the environment around us has been changed, and with all of the changes that exist in systems and regions and NHSE and with other public health and care, that we make sure that our next steps clinically are in total alignment with that. And that was the purpose of this, and to really start that next stage of the journey. And I thought it was a fantastic event, and I'm sure we'll get some fantastic outcome from that in terms of where to go next as an organisation. So I was just going to flag that one up as well, and that's all I was going to say. If there wasn't any other questions.
Well, thank you very much. Any last thoughts, Paul?
One other that it isn't actually mentioned in the report, but it's something that's come out in local media recently. It was publicised that the trust has an arrangement allowing some of its operating theatres to use at weekends by a private health company called Glasgow, and the NHS clinicians are engaged by Glasgow to provide weekend operations. And I would like to ask that we as governors be provided with a briefing on this arrangement and any other similar arrangements that the trust has with private healthcare companies for its facilities to be used by those companies.
Okay, and then we can provide a summary, I'm sure. You put that into the log and come back with something. It's Glanzo.
Right.
It's run by remember, all NHS trusts will have a number of arrangements and partnerships with independent sector providers. That's now half of the course, it's normal. And we have arrangements with other independent sector providers as well to deliver some of the care. For example, the CDC in Western is supplied by InHealth as another independent sector provider. The Glanzo arrangement is one whereby our clinicians will undertake operations in our theatres on intensive care patients at times when they would otherwise not be doing so, and those theatres would not be working. That has proven a very successful arrangement, and many people have been treated in that way according to the standards of our organisation. That's part of the point. That particular service is currently undergoing a re-procurement exercise, and so there will be in due course either a re-establishment of that arrangement or a discontinuation of that arrangement, depending on the outcome of the procurement exercise. But nevertheless, very happy to put any meat on those bones in terms of providing an update.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will come back to you with further information on trust approach to that. Thank you for your question, Paul. Can we move on? Go on then.
Yeah. Because I used to work in theatres prior, and Glanzo, when we were as theatre staff, we were part of the Glanzo team as well, and it was a very efficient service. So it was run by one of it was chaired by me, one of our community like anesthetists who used to, and it was the team was mainly the only one who used the hospital. It was a good way to reduce the waiting list. So working, within the theatre, I've always found Glanzo very efficient, working on a Saturday. It's a different mindset of people coming, and the productivity of patient work is very efficient. Yeah. So I just wanted to work in myself as a theatre staff prior. So yeah.
Well, it's good to have that.
Yes.
Real life
Yeah.
feedback. Thank you.
And I back that,
Yeah.
because I used to be with running as well.
Work together. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lisa. But we will come back to you about that. I do recognise the kind of sensitivities about it. And, it's not everybody that has the same outlook on these things.
And it's voluntary for the staff.
Yeah.
They don't have to sign up for it. It's on the list is on Saturday. And someone who wants to do it,
So it's
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that, I'm sure, but thank you for your input. I'm going to move us on because we are a little bit behind time, and I know, Paula, you're tight on time for your merger thing, did you say?
Well, I really put on time that should work, but
Okay, we'll try and get back on track then. Steve is on screen. Welcome to Steve Hams, who's our Group Chief Nursing Officer. Hello, Steve. And
Hi, morning,
Sarah
everybody.
and other colleagues from the Quality Outcomes Committee are here, Sue and Mark. So over to you to lead us through this next item. I know you had a focus group last week as well, so for a lot of governors, some of this will be uppermost and fresh in your minds.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. There's nothing like coming to the first council of governors and presenting. Good to see everyone. Thank you for sharing the slides, Rachel. I'm going to hand over to Steve in the interest of time. Steve is going to take you through a bit of an overview of some of the quality issues that we have been looking at as a group, but obviously with a focus on UHBW research.
Can I just point out, colleagues down this line, if you haven't got sight of them on your iPad or whatever, the screen is behind you with the slides.
Great. So Steve, do you want to tell me when you're ready to move on?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you all. So as Sarah's highlighted already, we're just going to go through a couple of areas that we have been talking through at Quality and Outcome Committee. So next slide, please. So firstly, starting with the National Oversight Framework, which colleagues will probably be aware of, but in terms of UHBW's positioning in the oversight framework, it's actually incredibly good. It's in segment 1. There are 5 segments, 1 being the best, 5 not so good. So UHBW sits in segment 1. There are 14 indicators that we fundamentally have responsibility for at the Quality and Outcomes Committee, and they are 7 for access to services, 3 for effectiveness and experience, and 4 for patient safety. In terms of the patient safety indicators, they are staff survey responses in terms of staff feeling comfortable to raise concerns, and we are 23 out of 134 organisations. MRSA infections, we are 132 out of 134 organisations. C. difficile infections, 44 out of 134 organisations. And E. coli infections, 115 out of 134 infections. And as you might appreciate from what I've just read out, the MRSA infections is an area where I know Sue and Sarah and others have been rightly challenging us on our overall performance. That relates to 5 bacteremia cases. So it's an area of focus for us, both across UHBW and NBT in terms of infection prevention and control. I know that Sarah, who's the Hospital Director of Nursing, has been doing some good work with colleagues to understand our position, but also learning from NBT and other organisations across the Southwest to see what they're doing, to see if we can bring some of those improvements to us at UHBW. Overall performance, though, I think is really encouraging. It's a real testament to the hard work of colleagues more broadly at UHBW. Okay, next slide, please. So I heard as I came into the room some of the early conversation about urgent emergency care. This has been a real focus for the Quality and Outcomes Committee, and when we were required to sign the plan off, both Ingrid and Maria joined the Quality and Outcomes Committee for that conversation. And there was real concern, I think it's fair to say, around some of the earlier plans, particularly given their relationship with the no criteria to reside position. So we continue to do a lot of work in monitoring our overall performance around the winter plan, particularly in relation to patient experience and people's experience of sadly having to queue in corridors or in spaces that we wouldn't normally want our patients to be cared for. But when we balance and when we're required to balance the overall risk of ensuring that ambulances can get back out to those that need it, we take a very careful, balanced approach, and Stu and his team do that incredibly carefully each and every day. So moving on. This is just a brief summary of the quality account priorities that have been previously agreed for UHBW. And again, you won't be surprised that as we start to bring our understanding and thinking together across UHBW and NBT, quality priorities helpfully align, which is important. So 3 key areas of focus for quality account priorities for UHBW for this year. They're around improving the experience of care, improving timely care, and improving patient safety. And again, the other very helpful thing is this also relates to the NHS oversight framework. So how we are assessed nationally against performance is also connected to some of the ambitions we have for improving patient experience at UHBW and safety and timeliness of care. Moving on, so the next slide is just an example of NBT, which we can move on from. On the next slide, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. The next slide. So just to share some of the work that we've collectively been doing around patient experience and the community participation group, Ingrid has been a strong and keen advocate of the community participation group, and we've now had 2 meetings. And I have to say, these meetings have probably been some of the most joyful times in the last couple of months, where we have had such a broad range of individuals, organisations, governors across the whole of Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire, who have come together to support us on our journey around our joint clinical strategy and our group clinical services programme, and are beginning to demonstrate some real insight that will, I know, support us in developing what will be a very vibrant programme around the joint clinical strategy. Excuse me, last time we did have a guide dog in training called Becky, who I have to say I spent a bit of time with. But it's I'm really looking forward to seeing where the community participation group takes us. Ingrid will be the co-chair alongside a member of the group who will co-chair the meeting together. But we're meeting about every 6 weeks. The first 2 meetings have been very much about getting to know each other and thinking about what we can do. But I'm very encouraged already by the commitment that a number of people, everybody is showing in that space. So this is exciting. This is really very exciting. Next slide. This slide just describes a bit of the timeline. We've already had our 2nd meeting, our 3rd meeting's coming up next month, where I think we'll start to get in a little bit more detail of the joint clinical strategy, and where I think the community participation group will begin to add real value. My sense is this is quite pioneering for an acute organisation or organisations to be doing this work, and again, we're learning from mental health organisations who do this well, community organisations that do this well, but also our really, really vibrant voluntary sector in Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire, who are really helping us shape what this looks like. Okay, next slide, please. In terms of the group clinical services, Stu talked about this a little earlier on, but this is just some of the timeline of the services going through that process. Cardiology has already moved, which again is beginning to develop some real benefits, and we heard about some of those at the community participation group. We have liaison psychiatry and then a range of other services there as well. Just to pick up on one, which is safeguarding, and we've actually been developing this as a joint service for the last 18 months, and we're seeing real benefit around joint leadership between UHBW and NBT, and that interface into our communities. We're sharing intelligence, sharing surveillance information about vulnerable adults and vulnerable children. And again, you won't be surprised that those adults and children do connect in to different organisations across BNSSG. So we're beginning to be able to share that information and really support the most vulnerable in our communities. Next slide, please. Patient experience then. So this is the National Inpatient Survey delivered by the Care Quality Commission every year. On the left-hand side, we have UHBW in the comparison with NBT. Overall response rate was 39%, and UHBW ranked 49th out of 131 trusts. So again, good performance, but I know the trust management team led by Stu and the team are working hard to ensure that this is an improved and continually improved position. The area that we are focusing on this year, and I know that Sarah Dodds and Becky Maxwell are supporting with this, is around discharge. And it was again interesting to hear some people's experience around discharge. So this is an area of focus for us this year to ensure that when we support people with discharge, we do it in a way in which people feel supported and we don't have the examples of failed discharges. But overall, this is good performance, but performance that we are absolutely seeking to improve on this year. Next slide. This is the National Children and Young People Survey. And again, overall, the Bristol Children's Hospital does well compared to other children's hospitals. An area I know, Sarah, that you were particularly keen for us to explore is that one area where we perform much worse compared to others, and that's around families staying overnight and things that are stopping you from sleeping. And our estate, in part, doesn't entirely help that. Most modern children's hospitals would have a bigger proportion of side rooms than perhaps what we have at UHBW. So again, I know that through the team there, they are doing some additional work to improve on the children's children and young people's patient experience for next year. Next slide. This is the National Cancer Patient Survey results, which came through Quality and Outcome Committee just last month. And again, overall, the position for UHBW is a really encouraged position. The teams have worked incredibly hard in recent years to improve overall experience. But again, there's still areas where we can make some further improvements. And that is particularly in relation to the interface between community partners in primary care to improve pathways, to improve information, and to improve accessibility. We do need to do some work across the Bristol group around ethnicity recording. And again, I know through both digital teams where we're making some improvements. So good, strong performance. You can see there that UHBW were ranked 31st out of 131 trusts. But again, not resting on our laurels, we want to be even better than that, but to acknowledge that good performance and the hard work of our teams. Moving on, Sarah, thank you.
Very much, Steve.
Oh, that was the last one. Sorry, I thought there was more. I was on a roll there.
Sorry, I took the others out. I didn't have enough time, so and then
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's
Great.
right.
Okay, brilliant. So as I say, I know you had a focus group last week and we're relatively short of time, but we do have a few minutes if there are things that people would want to pick up on further. So Chloe and then John.
I'll get John.
Okay, John then, and then Chloe.
Yeah.
Well, we run off. One of the graphs shows stars to do with the group clinical services. There are a lot of stars on there. What do the stars mean?
Would you like me to comment? Yes, it's a timeline. Yeah, timeline.
It was time points, it was reference points. If it's the stars on the
Yeah, quarter they're moving over it. Look at the quarters at the top.
Yeah, I can see all that. I'm just okay. So if you all understand, you can explain it to me. What's that?
It's instead of dots.
Just to try and make it a bit more engaging.
Yeah.
a bit more jazzy.
But the other thing is that we do hear a lot about inpatient surveys, children's surveys, cancer surveys. We used to hear a lot about maternity surveys. One of my things is outpatients, and there's the eye hospital, and so we've got what, 9 hospitals. Some of them are not necessarily specialists, but some sort of measure similar to these external measures would be interesting to hear reported on.
Do we have an outpatient survey?
No, I'd say, would you like me to comment? Back in the day, the CQC did run an outpatient survey. They paused that some years ago. We do have the friends and family test though, which is an in the moment survey that we ask both inpatients and outpatients. So we do have data on outpatients, and as you rightly say, we've got a number of larger outpatient facilities across the group and across UHBW. So that is available. That information is absolutely available.
The reason I raise it is that they are your biggest customer.
Yeah.
And yet, and opinions about the performance of a hospital may well be more influenced by outpatient experience, long waiting lists for outpatient follow-up appointments and things like that. So I just feel be good to get our eye on that particular subject.
That's for future meetings to bring some data relating to that.
Because we do have it, and similarly for maternity, which was also mentioned, that there are screens and screens of data on.
I'm aware that there's a bit of lot.
Yeah. I think Chloe and then Janice.
Firstly, thank you so much, Steve and Sarah. I think there's loads of really positive stuff there. I just have two short comments on the patient experience slides. First of all, on the inpatient ones, I felt there was a lot of results there which reflected people's experience of discharge, and that is also something that we've seen across the board in quite a lot of papers, and it seems to me that it links quite strongly to no criteria to reside. And I just wonder, without wishing to pile too much work on busy people, whether it would be worth having a governor focused discussion about what the trusts are doing around discharge in a more holistic way, because it seems that it pops up in multiple papers. And I note that there's something, I can't remember, an A3 meeting around discharge. I personally think it would be helpful for us to hear about what's happening with what the trust is doing around discharge and how that links into all the other things. So that's really just a request and a comment. I don't know if you wish to respond before I have my other.
And certainly timetable that in. Sarah, any thoughts from you?
Yes, and I know that is a focus of some of the work at UHW. So perhaps we might need to just let Becky and Sarah do some of that project work and then come back to that might be the best way to.
Thank you.
Which is the A3 thing.
Yes, yeah. And then the other thing quickly, I was a little bit disappointed to see that there was going to be less clinical nurse specialist capacity in the cancer survey. It pointed this out. I found having a CNS incredibly helpful. One thing I did find is the surgery. I only had a surgery CNS MBT, and when I moved to UHBW for oncology, there was no support at that time. I'm aware things changed. My question is there actually an opportunity here, despite increasing demand, with the move to a potential merger, to have a more seamless experience for patients going through cancer treatment and to have CNS support across the whole of their cancer treatment?
Do you want me to add? I mean, absolutely. In even my own experience of supporting family members through cancer treatment, the CNSs were incredibly important and valuable to that process. I think what this is referring to is the CNSs are developing their practice and becoming practitioners, but the principle of the support they give patients shouldn't change in the way that perhaps it might be described here. But I'm certainly happy to have conversations with both of our lead cancer nurses to ensure that the point that you've made is delivered.
Thank you. That's very reassuring.
I think, Mark, you want to come in on that same theme, do you?
Yes.
And then I'll go to Janice.
The point really, that I read it, clear, I think you're right. This is about their professional development, not in any way trying to kind of underplay or say that they're dilution of the quality of the service or who's available. That does come with risk, though, because you have to make sure that while someone's obviously learning, you've got the support there to provide the frontline services, be it what may. But I think possibly with a slight bit of nuance in our wording, it could be probably better as well. But I'm completely in the Steve there. Know that there's obviously a program of work in place there for those fantastic staff.
That's really positive. Thank you.
And our next one of them, the wellbeing, the Macmillan Centre last week, actually, and they are really making a big impact. So I agree. Janice, last word from you, and then we must move on to Merck. Janice.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks very much, Steve, for that very interesting presentation. Sorry, my question is again on the theme of discharges. I just noticed somewhere on your slides about there was an aim to increase the number of discharges at weekends. I'm assuming that's because there is a greater intake at A&E on weekends, for reasons we can all guess at. The only problem is with weekend discharges, I think, is that there's no care in the community in case something goes wrong following discharge. No GP, pharmacies closed, etc. And I know from my GP, I'm not a GP, but I had, experience in a GP practice, that was always a concern, actually. That was a while back. But I just wondered if you could comment on that aspect. Thank you. Sorry about my croaky voice.
That's all right. No, I'm very happy to. When we look at relative performance of weekend discharge across the group, actually across UHBW and MBT, we lag behind slightly. And by discharge, what I mean is the simple discharges. So those that require complex packages of care, it wouldn't be appropriate for those to be going at the weekend. So this is, we're talking about pathway. So pathway, what I would call 0. So those that have had routine surgery or have come to the end of their treatment who could go home at the weekend. What we tend to find is discharges generally drop off Saturday and Sunday. So some of the work, again, we've been doing across both organisations is things like criteria-led discharge that allows nurses to be able to discharge patients based on a set of criteria that's set by the consultant on the Friday. If the patient meets the criteria, they can then go home and the nurse can discharge them. So ideally what we'd want is when we get the influx of patients coming on the Monday, there's enough beds on the Saturday and Sunday to be able to fill that. So we just need to improve our overall discharge performance, but it will be simple discharges, not the complex ones that rely on social care, GP, and other types of services.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
So thank you, colleagues. I think we've had a good canter across some of the main issues, and we'll pick up the points and the actions that we've described and come back to them in due course. But I'm very conscious.
I'll withdraw my question.
And I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand properly.
You want me
You're
to-
withdrawing your question.
I'm happy to ask it at another venue, so.
You sure?
Or via the log, so, yeah.
Okay, if you're happy with that's helpful in terms of time management, please. Okay, let's move on then to Paula and Rob, who are here to talk to us about the group board and merger next steps. So welcome, and over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. So I know I don't need to introduce Rob because I've recent discussions, so we'll just crack on. So so you've got a recently detailed paper here for council governors that also includes the recent report in the public, just to make it easy to cross-reference. And I think this report for me sets out some of the key milestones that we would want appearances on that we are targeting as we go through our process. And we're going through this process at a reasonable pace, predominantly because we absolutely believe that the benefits we can deliver as a merged organisation are substantial, and we're really allowed to amplify the benefits that we identified when we set out initially to become a group. A couple of the key milestones I just wanted to draw out for the fact that our strategic case has been approved by NHSE. So that is a big milestone for us. They did their assessment really sort of up to mid-August. So it was a point in time assessment. But one of the things that we sort of commended and recognised as a green was our case for change and the strength of the case for patient benefit to be delivered. So I think that was something that was important to draw out. And the second is the recent completion of our due diligence, which is another key part of making sure that any assumptions we make, any risks that might present themselves to a successful, not just technical merger, but also how we integrate and bring together the best of both organisations to deliver the benefits. We completed that due diligence as a point in time assessment. We brought that to the board last week, and then we keep that dynamically reviewed as to our progress through tracking of the due diligence risks and our individual programme risks. So our work is now very much focused on working through the very detailed plans and assurances to take us up to merger and beyond merger. And you will know from reading the guidance that that's covered in our target dates for full business case and post-transaction implementation plan. So we are working to bring that through for board approval as draft cases early in the new year. NHSE then undertook a very detailed assessment of that, particularly focused on quality and on financial and on governance aspects. In that case, we draw out in more detail the cost benefit of merging, and we will continue throughout the process to engage with our wide range of stakeholders. And I guess we've had the opportunity to go through some of this in detail in some of the development seminars, strategy groups, and just with Ingrid and the non-execs. And we want to continue that. But in response to one of your requests and asks, which was a really helpful suggestion, we set out in today's paper a proposed sort of drumbeat of very regular, basically monthly touch points with governors to make sure that the assurances you need to fulfil your statutory duties and that we are meeting those month on month. And I just wanted to reference, Ben, I noticed in your lead governor report that you had sort of indicated a proposal for some sort of an assurance framework. I think you're trying to do Rob and I out the job.
Not
And appreciate when there's lots of talk of NHS redundancies. So I think honestly that would be duplicative. I think it's exactly the right question to ask. The purpose of these touch points is to step through the assurances that you need and to make sure that we're both giving updates, but we're also engaging and it's a two-way conversation. So that was all I wanted to cover, and so happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Paula. Any thoughts from governors? John?
One's a small point, just to Rob. The last time we met, we talked about who owned MBT building, the Brunel building, under the PFI scheme, because there would be PFI costs that may well need to be taken into account.
Yeah.
At that point, you thought that the trust owned the building. Have you verified that?
Yeah, so that's still the information I've been provided by the estates and finance departments. I've nothing further to add to that, John.
So you've asked them since we last spoke, and they believe they own it.
I don't think it's believe. I think private finance initiatives like us having a mortgage, isn't it?
No, but never mind. It's more like rental.
John, I think I will take an action to ask that question again in that specific way, because I have a feeling that the private sector organisation technically owns it, and we have a right to it. But let's get that clarified.
That's the normal PFI process. There's a special purpose company that owns the building, so you rent it off them.
It's tied up in a contract that means they can't pull it out from under us. There's no risks about,
You own it in 15 years' time. Yeah.
We own it in several £100 million worth of time for sure. So I think we might just go around that loop again. I don't think from a kind of practical perspective it changes.
It was only in terms of what's referred to as PFI costs.
Yeah.
Right. The other point I wanted to make was I've asked a while back about the benefits. I've been asked by an ex-governor that back in 2012 a merger between NBT and UHBW was proposed at the time, but it was some research was done by the university into the benefits or not of a merger, and it transpired that the merger didn't take place. And I just asked the question, are there any surveys, investigations into a recent similar mergers in the NHS that perhaps took place 5 years or more ago that indicate that these benefits are actually deliverable?
But we have been drawn and lessons learned from the village, that there have been different reviews of this, and I think, John, we will recall when we brought the kind of close down of the UHB and W merger, we brought a close down, closing to kind of what we were up against the benefits delivery, and we referenced some of that evidence, the national evidence in that, but we demonstrated where we were against delivery of our own benefits, and that was a really key report. I think it was in January 22 we brought that.
So if you've got any references to those, we'll be happy to have.
Yeah, happy we pull that out then, and we recently sort of engaged with Somerset and with Royal Free on their merger, which was only in January past, with North Meads. So we're tapping into as many sort of lessons learned as we possibly can, not just to make sure that we identify benefits fully, but that process of delivering those benefits is something we took learning from. And the only other thing I would reference is you're aware that as part of the evaluation, if you like, how do we know that we're delivering as a group, and that we're working independently with Health Innovation Network West of England to undertake a sort of an independent academic sort of theory and change based approach to try to help us understand what are the things that we are doing that contribute to benefit delivery.
That would be great. And so if there could be some sort of reference table that says
This is what we've drawn.
you've drawn upon these particular reports, and that would be great.
Really helpful, thanks.
Thank you.
John, could I just add a personal reflection, which is that my last trust, where I was chair, came into being as a result of a merger that had lots of parallels with us, because one was a foundation trust, one wasn't. They were both of similar size. They both had CQC good. They were both in good order. It was a coming together of equals. And it was a really successful merger of some 6.5 years standing now.
So there
And
might
still
be some
going well.
performance data from that that shows that these improvements have been made in the 6.5 years.
Absolutely.
That would be good to see.
Yeah, but I've lived the dream.
Sometimes it's a nightmare though.
You don't, yeah, and there's a whole body of evidence when mergers don't work, why it is so, and often it's about culture and failure to drive out the deliverables.
So some of the things that we're not achieving at the moment, getting bigger, does that necessarily mean you're going to be able to achieve what we haven't been able to achieve in the years past?
I don't think the drivers scale. It's all the stuff that Stu was talking about earlier about bringing together the best of both to provide a better, more equitable service for the people and communities we serve. That is absolutely the driver. That's what it's about for us. It's not bigger is better, or I mean, there are financial benefits, but even that isn't the main driver.
No, being there is going to fix no criteria to reside in and of itself. But what it might do, for example, is it might place us in a stronger position to be considered for integrated health organisation status, which then would mean that we have different levels, different opportunities to work that we wouldn't be able to do as two separate legal entities.
I need to look up integrated health status, because that would be interesting to see, and if it's something that definitely improves things, great. Yeah.
Or lots of evidence to indicate that it does. So yeah, but I think the point is that it's a pathway rather than necessarily a destination in terms of some of those.
So have I missed any other hands before I go to Caroline, and then Ben and Chloe?
Thank you for that. Just a quick question. At this stage of the merger, are there any unexpected hurdles you come up against that you haven't, that have just been surprising, or that you need to let's keep an eye on it and to be aware of that? It's very easy and very nice to focus on the benefits already, but are there any let's just keep an eye on this one, or anything really unexpected?
Thankfully nothing unexpected, but that was the whole purpose of the due diligence work, was exactly to draw that out. So we sort of we had a weekly meeting with our senior leads across all of the functions, really looking at that to sort of say what might come into what do we need to start to think about now. Sometimes it's the lead time for things that really take you by surprise if you don't start planning early. So that due diligence has obviously flagged some areas that we need to keep more of an eye on. The culture and the staff engagement and the OD and the communication and the messaging, absolutely fundamental. You know, we have formal processes, things like 2P to work through. We need to make sure we're resourcing that properly so we do it well. And that people don't feel blindsided in any way. And then we've got existing issues that we just need to make sure that we're not inadvertently, so I don't know, our estate, for example, some of those challenges we have. So that as we plan, we're trying to capitalise on exactly the conversation we've just had. How can we maximise the scale of being able to prioritise our resources across both organisations rather than choose to invest in something here when there's actually something much more kind of that needs to be sorted over here. So no surprises, but I always say you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, there's nothing bubbling. I know you don't know, like might not put an indication of anything bubbling. Being a higher risk than would have been expected at this time.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say is that our timetable is dependent on a number of different things. And one of those is the medium-term financial plan that all trusts have to do. At the moment, the trust is putting together its medium-term financial plan, and it's all very tight in terms of that informing our business case for merger. And national timetables can change. So I think, again, it's not unexpected, but it's just one of those things that has to fall correctly in order for everything else to line.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks. Just to say that the outline of the touch points that you've put forward, I think is really sensible and I'm really welcoming. I just wanted to ask what the plans were in terms of using either the existing schedule that governors have or these touch points as opportunities to seek assurances from NEDs as well on the merger progress. So can I ask whether the plans as written intend on inviting non-execs to join at various touch points for assurance?
Yeah, so Ingrid, you may want to come in on this, but these are sort of trying to use your scheduled meetings as much as we possibly can. And we would normally have non-execs of almost all of these. Then there's a few where we put an update on. Now that may be using a meeting, it could be a written update that gets issued out so that we're not missing sort of the opportunity to provide information. Ideally, it will be an in-person, and that would be the plan on absolutely key touch points. So, for example, you know, Sue as the independent non-exec and who chairs the merger committee for the UHBW, absolutely, particularly the February touch points. And I know we've already agreed to that you will be present absolutely for that. So, because that will be sort of we believe we're at the right stage to ask NHSE to come in and give a detailed assurance, so then we can share that with governors at that point. And then again, when NHSE complete their assurance, that's very much right up close to our final decision making. We may need to ask for an exceptional council of governors. We can't confirm that until NHSE confirms their absolute timelines, and we're pressing very hard to do that.
Thank you.
I can close next. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for a really good paper as well with all the information that I needed, certainly. So I really appreciate that. So a very quick question. As Governor, are we able to see the strategic case that was submitted to NHSE?
To be honest, the strategic case, we didn't actually go away and write here's a strategic case just for merger. Right. Because we've had and NHSE supported that because we've had done all the work on why we were becoming a group. And we had extensive engagement. We had published a benefits case for that. And so we used that plus a range of other any governance type documentation for committees or support from colleagues like formerly ICB, and provided here's where you'll find all of the things you need NHSC, so with their full cross-reference table. Okay. It would be a pretty boring read.
I'm just really conscious. I'm conscious that as a new governor, I can absolutely ask the team to help share the group benefit case. But to fulfill my roles and responsibilities, I need a baseline of understanding, I think. And that sounds like it would be quite helpful.
The group benefits case is absolutely, and as I say, that is where our strong patient benefits case, because fundamentally, as David's just said, merger isn't a thing in itself, it's a means to an end. And we believe, and we've been given that feedback from staff since we started to work more as a group. But actually, if we could just clear some of the complexity of the two statutory organisations out of the way, it would allow them to operate more effectively and faster. So it's almost like an acceleration of the benefits of group. So if you're okay to start there, and we're very happy if there is any other questions, sort of on the strength of the case.
Yeah, but I mean, we can absolutely recirculate the benefits case because it was pretty much repurposed to fit what was needed for the strategic case for the merger, because it kind of remained the same pretty much. But we can recirculate.
It's actually on completing your document now, and you can say we can circulate only. Thank you.
Okay, so good to know it's there. James and then Chloe. Sorry, Janice.
A similar or related question. I've got wind in the document of a merger transaction case and a business case. I mean, Chloe used a different thing. Is this the same document? Just called through different.
Yeah, I didn't hear the third one, sorry, but the strategic case is a subset. So the strategic case you have to complete before you're able agreed, so you can move to pro-business case stage. So pro-business case, it is the merger transaction case. Apology for being
And that's what the merger committee is tasked with reviewing ahead of relevant touch points.
Yeah, but the merger, absolutely, the merger committee is overseeing the process in itself, but absolutely one of the key things will be, so the merger committee has considered the due diligence and made the recommendation in the board for their independent views on each aspect.
So what I was thinking of is really good touch point for scheduling. And I love the T-4 again. It looks to me like in that schedule there are 4 in-person or virtual discussion points, and then there are 2 written updates in the schedule, which I think is adequate given where we are, because it feels like a long time, but it doesn't feel like a long time. We're trying to carry up some way. I'm just wondering if, not necessarily for governors to keep a track on the development of the merger case, but to have sight of the development of the ecosystem as that merger committee and as it goes up forward, what the building blocks look like on each of those steps, either in those in-person form meetings or in those verbal things. It'd be really helpful for the government to see that build over the next 6 months prior to them voting. I don't know whether that's possible because it might all come together at one point, and we don't want to see all the inner workings of all the work streams necessarily.
No.
But that balance between not having it too late, T-4, and getting asked to vote, but also sufficiently patient to know what the journey has been over the 6 months and make that board decision around have we got the staff, the patient and the stakeholder impacts in our mind when we are putting our it's an interesting balance.
Yeah, that's helpful. Happy to take that away. I think knowing that governors are happy with the proposed budget points, I think that's the next layer of what we'll be covering each thing. Is it a deep dive into something particular? But probably maybe just to set out a simple timeline. Again, as sort of in touch points now, we can add those in and what else is happening around those, like the independent committees.
Which have started meeting now.
Yeah.
Soon, it's chaired
Yeah, I had the first one where we looked, and I think it's really important that it's the UHB merged committee, so we're looking at it through the UHBW lens, and there is a NPT one, and that's the independence that's really important. So we're looking at it from different angles. And at our first meeting, we reviewed the due diligence and the work to date, with the view of making a recommendation to the group board. Were there any red flags, anything that our UHBW merger committee were concerned about in terms of the due diligence? And there was nothing. We had, as Paula said, we had discussions around GP, we had discussions around the PFI, having clarity about that. But actually, we raised concerns around the staff and patient engagement, because we feel that if we don't get the messaging out really clearly and quickly enough, and that was again discussed at the board, so that was an area that I think we will carry on pushing, because we need to make sure many of us have been here in the previous lives, and if you don't have really good communication and staff engagement, it starts going wrong. So we raised concerns at the board that we want to see the engagement plan as an absolute priority. And I think your point actually was about what we will be looking at various times. I think that's really important, and I think Paula said you've got the touch points, so you now need to see underneath what we'll be looking at. That, I think, James.
There was a reference in there to the OD and culture plan being under development.
Yes.
Presume it's a related point.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that is where we've gone back and said we need to see that quickly. We need to push forward. And don't get me wrong, there is loads of work going on, masses of work, but we need to be assured that it's progressing quickly enough and in the way that we feel will engage the public, will engage our staff, and also so that if anybody comes to any of you and asks you what are the merger benefits, you will all be saying the same thing, because believe me, that's when it starts to go wrong, when you go, actually, I'm not too sure. So, and also we've got a lot of learning from our merger with Western, and how, Arabelle, you remember. Annabelle. We did questions and answers for staff, because the questions, most of them are quite repetitive, but we learned very quickly that you need to get that right. So a lot of learning from Western and from Somerset and other previous places, but I think your point about what we're going to be looking at is really crucial.
Absolutely. Janice.
Yeah, thanks. Just can I say, the last comments you made about staff, making sure you've got good staff engagement. I'm really pleased to hear that, because it's something we as governors have been asking about for some time. So that's really fantastic to hear that. And I want to thank you for the paper and the report, Paula. And it's just really good to have all the timelines and the processes in one paper, in one place. It's really helpful. My question is really an observation, and it's probably a bit crazy, but we as governors have a really vital role, because we're supposed to seek assurances and approve the whole thing at the end of it. And it just strikes me that we're approving also on behalf of MBT. They don't have any representation. So that's, yeah. Could you just comment on that?
Yeah, I think you can. Do you want to take that one, Paula or Sue? Pulling over each other to come in.
So absolutely agree. I mean, it's, you represent a huge range of constituents and
sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, Janice, I'm further down from. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, thank you.
I said governors represent a really broad range of constituent bodies, so that is the fundamental role of governors, to make sure that we're following the right processes. I won't rehearse all of the conversations you had with NHS providers, experts, etc., about governors' role in terms of what you're approving, that we are following the right processes, not necessarily whether you believe it's fundamentally the right thing. It's an interesting nuance. With regard to the approving on behalf of MBT, that is not the case. You are actually approving on behalf of, if you like, the technical and legal way that we need to go through this transaction, which is a 56A, which technically is a merger by acquisition. So it is UHBW acquiring North Bristol Trust, and therefore the decision is taken by UHBW. However, the process we have was that we need both boards to support that merger in the right direction, and we do that at board, and we use the independent merger committees of MBT to achieve that as well.
So basically what you're saying is that the two boards are satisfied and they approve, so then it comes back to us as governors. Yeah, is that what you're saying, really?
So both boards approve, and then the governors also have to give a
Okay,
yes.
all right.
Yes.
So MBT gets to say through their board. Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you for that. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I totally recognise Janice's point, and I think you talked about FAQs earlier. From a more human perspective, the Council of Governors is made up of people who live across Bristol and beyond. So I think moving away from the technical aspect, if I was just a member of the public, kind of I am, I guess, an FAQ would sort of emphasise that point as much as the technicalities. Yeah, if that makes sense.
So we do have a set of FAQs that are available to all staff and on our intranet, that sort of step through questions we are getting as we engage with staff. So it's a dynamic FAQ that we keep adding to. I'm quite sure we can make that available to governors.
You're asking something a little bit different.
It was more just saying the human element.
The street might want something to readily get their head round about what this is all about and any concerns that they might have.
I was thinking of reading below the comments on Bristol 24/7. And the sort of human response rather than under section 56A, if that makes sense. And I don't know what your kind of lines to take are, because they're slightly different to FAQs, and it was just a thought I had.
And that communications and engagement with the outside world piece is exactly the thing that Sue was referring to.
Absolutely right.
And that's
Because
what
you are representing. And one of my criticisms is this often seems city centric. And we are covering, all rural communities, Western, and so we just need to make sure that when we are responding, we are not talking Bristol City. But I think again, we learned through Western merger that we might pose the responses slightly differently. I used to use my mother's test. In fact, my mum used to read the responses in Western and to the public questions, because actually we would speak probably slightly differently to staff, because they're more interested in, what's the name of the organisation going to be? Where's the trust headquarters? Am my uniform going to change? Is my line manager going to change? So the things that staff often ask will be slightly different from so I used to be my mum's test, and believe me, she used to be there. Oh, I say that under the Western measure. But you're absolutely right. We need to be really clear how we communicate in a really appropriate and effective way with the public, and that's what we've gone back and pushed back and say, because we're not seeing it yet.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, but Paula and Rob needs to get away. Xavier, you want to come in?
So maybe just to say, just having an open query, I can answer John's question about PFI, having just had an email from a perhaps lawyer. So interestingly enough, for the North Bristol NHS Trust PFI, the building is owned by the trust. Unitary payment is a payment for ongoing FM services and effectively a mortgage repayment to cover the cost of the construction.
There we are. We resolved. Right. Brilliant. Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you very much.
Fab, shall we move to the recommendations then, unless there's anything else really pressing? Okay, so we're being asked to note the update, including the programme governance structure, which we've heard a little bit about during Sue's comments, the transaction timelines, and roles and responsibilities, which I know you've already been through with Govern Well. And then to review and confirm the proposals for onwards engagement touch points. It sounds like pretty content with those, so they're monthly from January effectively until the point of the merger, hopefully sometime in the summer. And that will enable you to discharge your government duties in line with your statutory duties. All happy? Okay, great, thank you all very much. Let's have a break. Okay, Lead Governor report, Ben, over to you.
I'll take the report as read and only really just pull out one little highlight that's a thing that I didn't particularly mention, which is I have found the last two public boards really, really engaging and really useful for the assurances we need going forward with what we've just discussed. So I would really just encourage governors where they can to either watch the videos back or to attend public boards to watch them because they are so useful. Happy to just take any questions on the report.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks for the feedback on the boards. Good to have you there, and some other governors have been some of crystal regularly as well. So, any points people would like to raise, particularly from Ben's report? Been pretty busy, Ben.
I am, yeah. I took stuff out of it, but yeah, no.
I'll just say thank you for the report, because it's good to read it and get that speed of where you're going and what we're doing. So that's great. Thank you, Ben.
I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you. Shall we move on then to the audit contract and the appointment of the auditor, which of course is one of your statutory duties as governors. Do we have our finance person?
Yeah.
Hello, welcome. Good to see you here. So Kath Cookson, who's here from the finance team and is going to enlighten us about exactly what we need to be doing and what we need to understand about this. So over to you, Kath.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for your time this morning. So, as Chair of indicated, my name is Catherine Cookson. I'm the head of finance, financial services and insurance, working into daily experience at UHBW. The paper we're presenting today is around the joint appointment of the external audit contract, and this paper has been developed alongside our colleagues at North Bristol Trust. So I'm here representing my colleague Paddy O'Brien as well. Taking the paper as read, I'll just draw out some of the key aspects of it. Under Local Audit and Accountability Act, we're required to appoint an external auditor in the December ahead of the year that we need that appointment. The contracts for UHBW and MBT are currently undertaken by KPMG for UHBW and Grant Thornton for MBT. These contracts are due to end at the end for this financial year, so we need new auditors for the 26-27 financial year onwards. And obviously we have the complexity in that that's the year that we will potentially be merging as well. So there's an added layer of complexity around the appointment process or the appointment of an auditor. We should have, if we take the accounting, the Local Audit and Accountability Act, we should have been in the process of making that appointment before now, so it should be done by the end of December. But due to the announcement around the merger, we needed to regroup and understand exactly what we were going out for audit on and what those timetables were. So therefore, we're a bit delayed in the process. But there's no issues in being delayed. We gave the assurance to NHS England that we are in the process of going through that procurement, so there are no problems in the fact that we won't hit that December deadline. As an FT Foundation Trust, as you said, the appointment of the auditors comes via the Council of Governors, and that's what we're here today, is to present the paper on the appointment process that we're putting together and the documents that will go into that appointment process. So the Council of Governors, via the audit, the
external audit selection task and finish group, which is an appendix to the paper, sets out how that appointment process is expected to happen. And that terms of reference sets out the purpose, the role, the membership and the duties of that group. So as I've indicated, this is being done in parallel with our MBT colleagues. So myself and Paddy O'Brien have been working closely with our procurement team at BWPC to develop the invitation to tender, which sets out the exact detail of what we need from an external audit provider. So drawing on the key timeframes within the paper, where the proposal of what we're going through went through audit committee last month due to the timings of the committee. It's coming here today for your approval and for recommendations on how we take that panel forward. The tender itself is due to be published on the 1st of December and then close middle of January because we recognise the Christmas and the New Year period. So with evaluation into February and presentations towards the end of February for appointment in March. So the paper is here today to advise of the role of the Council of Governors, and Mark and his team have pulled together the task and finish group. And within there, the panel suggests from the Council of Governors, we have the Chair Governor of the Quality Focus Group, the Chair Governor for the Strategy Group, and then one other nominated governor to support that process. So Mark and his team will liaise with the appropriate chairs to confirm availability and to then go through a process via nominations and appointments committee to identify the kind of one other nominated governor. The thing I'll stress in all of this as well is that our procurement colleagues will provide thorough training and support so that we've got full understanding of what we need to undertake via an evaluation process and how we go through those stages. So anybody from this group who is going to be represented as part of that task and finish group will have the appropriate training and support taken through to appointment.
Thank you. And I can see from convene, Chloe, that you had a particular question about the panel. So should we take that and then I'll open it out for any other points?
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's more about clarification. There's a lot of different terminology. I think in several places I'm a little bit confused about how many bodies there are. So I'm really happy if you've had a chance to read it, because I know I put it on there last night, to respond or to take that as a written comment later for clarification.
Okay, so this is under point 3.3.
Well, that's 5.3 and then also at
Yeah,
page 63.
Sorry,
No.
Size come up in 3.3. But related.
There's several different ways the panel is described. There's also several different ways the external auditor selection something is described. So I'd just like clarification, but that doesn't have to be now because I suspect it'd be quite a tedious conversation.
All right, thank you for sparing us that. That's very thoughtful.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or clarification that people need on process, the way that the panel's going to come together, the timeline, the rationale for it all?
No, really. No.
Seeing anything on the screen? Okay, so we'll come back to your points later, Chloe, and make sure that we've got absolute clarity on what we mean by some of the terminology. So can I ask Council of Governors then to approve the approach and the timeframes for the tender, including a flexible procurement strategy and the establishment of an external audit selection panel,
Yes.
which I suspect is one of the things you're talking about, Chloe. So would it be worth just pausing for a millisecond to make sure we all understand how that is constituted? Right.
Yeah, I think the problem is, it's been, as you say, it's been called different things in different. So the external audit selection panel is the same
as the external auditor selection, pass and finish group. They're one on the same body, basically, they're just being referred to slightly differently in the report, but
Okay, that's really helpful. Is it also the same as the auditor selection panel?
yes.
And, okay, also, in that case, is it the external audit selection group, which I'm guessing is also the task and finish group? Is it them, or is it the audit committee plus the council of governors who determine membership of the panel? Well, hang on, it can't be.
No,
it can't be the task and finish group who determines the same membership. This all does need to be cleared up. I think.
Yeah. But to simply put, the audit committee and the council of governors approved terms of reference and membership of that group.
And there was
Whatever,
one group.
there's one group, yes.
Okay, thank you. I am happy.
That help?
Yeah, I'm happy now.
We simplify this then and just agree on one name.
Yeah.
Because this is ridiculous. You can't have 5 names in a document all meaning the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go through it and make sure it's referred to as one name from here on in, yeah.
And apologies for that. I think it's Mark and I working in separate teams and not bringing our papers together. So an oversight on our part, I do apologise for that.
I think it's easily done, and I appreciate having all the information here and that it's come from different places. But yeah, one name.
Great. But I think we all understand it's all synonymous.
Yeah,
basically.
Now we do.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. So are you happy to approve?
Yeah.
No, John.
They're all chairs.
Sorry?
Members are all referred to as chairs. Who's going to chair the?
The chair of the audit committee will chair the external auditor selection task and finish group.
And will this be a consensus or will this be a vote?
I mean, I would hope it would be a consensus, and also that, if I understand it, there's quite a detailed scoring system within the.
It will be a procurement process.
Yeah.
So it will be following that procurement process through, and then you'll be being informed by the.
The scoring process will be important to explain early on.
Did you want to comment on that? Thank you. Yes, the invitation to tender, which is in the process of being finalised with our procurement team, sets out the detail of the draft kind of scoring process. So once we have the confirmation of who the attendees of the panel group are, we will then circulate that and enable you to have that conversations to run through exactly how it works and what the scoring is pulling together. As Xavier has indicated, it's a full procurement that is kind of tried and tested on how we've done it before. And John, it's similar to the process we run, 5-6 years ago when we first started.
Like the Welsh comedian, I was there.
Yeah, so we're following a tried and tested process that we've already kind of gone through.
So one last question, and that is, you've listed this centrally provided list of people who you can select to attend or they're going to come from. But you also say a lot of them aren't big enough to do it.
Yeah.
So I suspect it's going to be the big four.
Yeah, so what we've also done is put out a kind of pre-notice pre-notice notice, that doesn't sound right, but a pre-tender notice, and at the moment only KPMG and Grant Thornton have responded to it, so we are expecting at the most 3 or 4 of them to come back, because as you indicate, not all of them are going to meet the regulatory threshold in order to deliver this audit.
Would you accept a maximum of 5 or 3?
Well, we to go through the tender process, it would then have to be scored appropriately. So depending on who submits a bid, we would then go through the scoring process as set out in the invitation to tender.
But presumably if you got less than 3, it would be too difficult.
I don't think that as long as we run the process and have publicised the desire to contract with somebody, if we only have one submission, we can still proceed as long as we score it and they can achieve it. Yeah, I'm just cognizant this is obviously a meeting in public and we just have to be careful. We're getting into a level of detail now about particular suppliers. We've got to be able to see this on recording, but as long as we follow the procurement process to the letter and make it clear to all the different parties who might be interested, they can submit It doesn't matter how many people submit, we would have to score and go and
Okay.
follow our process, so we
Sorry, given we're on to scoring and voting, I wondered if it's helpful just to clarify my other question. So it mentions at section 5.2 attendance of, I actually don't know what it's on because it could be another challenge sometimes. I can't work out what page it's on, sorry. It talks about specialist advisors. And my question is, do the specialist advisors, who I think are a good idea, have a vote? It mentions they only attend parts of meetings, potentially. So my assumption would be that they don't have a vote, but as the section where they're listed is the membership section, and it doesn't specifically say they don't have a vote, it's really unclear to me right now whether they vote as part of the task and finish group.
Right, so basically, only the members under 5.1 can vote. So
Right.
anybody listed under attendance does not have a vote.
Okay. But 5 is membership and then 5.1 is constituency and 5.2 is attendance. I just wonder if it could be a tiny bit clearer.
let's take that offline, recirculate it, clarify. But
Well-
Dan's position is that specialist advisors will not have a.
That was my assumption, yeah. Thank you.
Are we ready to approve the recommendation?
Yeah.
Right, everybody happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, anybody not? Okay, lovely, thank you very much. Okay, UHBW Constitution update. We have been round this a couple of times already, so I'm hoping this might be quite quick and straightforward, but is it Sophia or Mark that's going to introduce this? Mark?
It's me, but I say very briefly that this report was brought to the Council of Governors at this last meeting, detailing a number of amendments regarding developments in the group, which needed to be reflected in the Constitution. At that point, Ben raised some amendments as well, particularly around the standing orders for Council of Governors and the board. And so those have also been incorporated in this document. So the full Constitution has been provided with all the amendments included within it. So it's here for hopefully approval. I would say thank you.
So,
I am so sorry. I clearly have too much time on my hands. There is still a rogue E. Implying that, yeah, because I saw that the vast, I recognised after this last time, and I noticed that the vast majority of them is done, so I flagged it.
it's just a road one.
It's just a rogue one, so, but thank you for changing all the other ones.
Okay. Any other points on the Constitution? As I say, we have been round the block with this. Happy now, Ben?
I was just saying, I know this exercise sort of started as wanting to align the standing orders between Council of Governors and the board, and I'm thankful particularly with that we lost Eric halfway through the process, that it made the process a little bit difficult, but I'm very grateful. I know, Mark, I saw assurances from you privately that the changes don't need to go back to board for approval, but I wondered, I think it would be good just to assure everyone that that's the position.
Absolutely, yes. So the boards have seen the initial changes regarding the group. So it's just the minor amendments that we've discussed, which needed to be incorporated with Council of Governors as the meeting body.
All content? Any non-contents? Okay, lovely, thank you very much. Now then, where have we got to? Oh, Governor and membership forward look. Emily.
This report is for information, but I just wanted to fill out 2 things today. Firstly, a reminder that we have asked for expressions of interest from governors, as we have 2 places available on the Nominations and Appointments Committee. So we have 1 seat for a public governor and 1 for a staff governor. If anyone is interested, please let us know by the 20th of November, which is Thursday, and then we can bring it to the Council of Governors meeting for approval. And the second thing that I just wanted to point out was that we have now circulated the meeting dates for the new financial year. So let us know if you've got any queries to the foundation draft email address, and we will start sending invites your way soon. And that's it from us.
Thank you very much. Anything to raise on that report? It is just for information today, so Governor's log of communications, I will just take as read, I think, unless there are particular points that anybody would want to highlight or draw attention to. Not seeing any hands, so we will again take that as being for information. Any other urgent business today? Chloe?
Very quickly, I did notice in the media there was a report about tree felling by the Bristol Heart Institute, and it was suggested, I have not delved into this, that this was done without getting permission from the council in contravention of tree protection orders, and I wondered if there was anything anyone could say about that.
Okay, is this the same issue that you were dealing with, Rob?
Yeah, so
Right.
I went to
This
see,
comes forward the other
yeah,
day.
I went over and seen the resident who told me about what was happening. It was just basically the first course of action. There was no communication regarding, there was other work being done by the estates here where they blocked the road, closed the road down, and had to put new central heating in their flats. So that was his first complaint, and the second one, he took me down to the wooded area, and where he lives, his flat, the big trees in front of them, there's the Art Institute, and you've got the helicopter landing pad. And he said it's not a problem because they're used to it, but those trees sort of down, block some of the volume coming from the helicopter. Now these trees have been cut. It's 15 of them that's been cut. And there was a badger sat there, and he's adamant that they didn't get planning permission, and there's going to be a cost coming to the NHS. So there is, it really was. There's no information, no communication, nothing been given to the residents that live there.
So thanks for following it up.
Yeah.
Responded to one of your constituents in that way.
I've raised it as a governor's log
Yeah.
to ask who's ever responsible for the estates to maybe in future references to give the residents that live nearby information if any work's being done to their properties and so on.
So it also came as a public question to the board. And we did respond to it in board and have action for our direct communications to go and speak, not just with that individual, but more broadly with local residents. I don't know if there's anything to add, Steve, before I go to Phil.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of basic ground maintenance undertaken around that whole bank. So there are a number of large trees there, and there are a number of more modest sized trees and shrubberies and bushes, and basic ground maintenance have been undertaken to clear that, especially in the context of the fire risk that came last time of the woodland walk, and so on. That's quite appropriate that has been undertaken. What I'm not yet 100% sure of is whether any of the more, should we call them, sort of sapling sized trees require some sort of permission we have or have not obtained. We've asked for that detail. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's probably a little bit of an I think I don't think we've gone out there and cut down a whole load of the big trees. I wouldn't give that impression. This is like basic ground maintenance that's been undertaken, is my understanding. But anyway, we're looking into the detail of the planning issue, and if we have had an oversight in that, fine, we'll pick it up. We'll own that. We haven't, because it's more maintenance and smaller issues, then of course responding that.
I went with Rob. The stumps are that big, so they're not saplings.
Right.
There are quite a few big ones. But one of the things that I've asked, his name? Felix, to do is to consider setting up a resident email address, so having an association where we can actually, as the NHS, send it to them. Because at the moment, it's just voices in the wilderness. And of course, what's happening is they're just feeling unloved. But some of those trees are quite big.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of, and they were quite tall.
So I mean, definitely looking into it. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll just say
so we can get the exact detail, but I don't know the answer yet. We'll definitely
I thought you had photos.
He did, yeah. He sent me some pictures. I got there.
Before and after. I'm not gonna speculate any further. I'll take it away, as we already have, and find out. the
Yeah,
details.
there is just one other thing, what might be considerate to look at is there is a badger set there. And it's illegal to disturb a badger set, so there's not only if the tree's been cut down, there's that situation as well. So there might be some coming down the line regarding that as well. I don't know. I'm only going forward because I can't confirm that it's definitely a badger set. 'Cause I haven't seen it. I'm only going by what the resident told me. So just let you know that's another pending thing that could come your way.
Stu's given us the assurance this is under investigation. We don't know the outcome of that yet. We'll take on board both issues about trees and badger sets.
Yeah.
The Director of Commons has been tasked with a connection with the local specific resident, but actually with the residents more broadly. So great idea if they're going to set up a group or an email address to facilitate that. And we'll just have to wait and see what the outcome of that is. Any other urgent business for today? John?
Just a comment on the recent Help Matters event. So congratulations to the corporate governance team. It was a fantastic event. It's one of our public facing events, so we get to meet the public there. So it would be nice to see a few more governors there.
Yeah.
And was
This was the swallowing one, wasn't it? Yeah, I heard really good feedback about that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for supporting it, John. Good to hear. Okay, I've just got one item, which is that we have in fact got an appointment now that we can announce and has been formalised because it's gone through all the checks for our new Group Director of Governance. And her name is Lavinia Ransell, and she will be joining us, I think, on the 12th of February, January. Oh no, don't panic, Zane. The 12th of January. She's coming from Gloucestershire Health and Care Trust, so I have worked with her before, but she's very experienced, very knowledgeable, and I'm absolutely certain will do a fantastic job with her. So look forward to welcoming her. Some of you may have seen her. She did come along to the board meeting last week, incognito, because we couldn't announce her at that point. But did some of us quietly say hello and welcome to her. So I look forward to seeing her in January. Okay, I think we are done with this part of the meeting.
Yes.
In which case I'll close public session and we are resolved to meet in private session for the next couple of items which relate to personal